Be me, 35 years old, working as a property manager and small landlord here. Own 3 rental properties that I saved up for over the years. One is a duplex, where I live in one unit and rent other. Been doing this for 8 years and never had major problems with tenants. Current tenant in my duplex moves out after living there 3 years. She was great tenant, always paid on time, never caused any issues. Post the unit online and get about 20 applications within a few days. Neighborhood is desirable and rent is fair for the area and size. One applicant is a woman named Sutton, who is 29, works in nonprofit. Her application looks good, with decent income and references included clearly. Credit score is okay, not great, but acceptable for rental approval standards. Call her references, and they say she is responsible and pays bills on time. Interview her at a coffee shop to get a sense of her character. She asks about my background and how I got into real estate. Tell her I saved up and bought the first property 8 years ago, building portfolio. She nods and says that is interesting, but does not ask many questions. Ask her about her job and what she does at the nonprofit. She says she works on social justice issues and community organizing projects. Says she is passionate about equity and making the world more fair. I think that sounds nice and do not see any red flags. Run her application and everything checks out, so I approve her tenny. She signs the lease and moves in the following week with her stuff. First month, she pays rent on time with no issues at all. Second month, same thing. Rent comes in on time electronically through portal. Everything seems normal and I have no complaints about her as tenant. She is quiet and keeps to herself mostly, which is ideal for duplex. Occasionally see her coming and going, but we do not interact much. Seems like this will be another good, long-term tenant situation. Around month 3, she starts posting on social media about landlords constantly, talking about how landlords are parasites who exploit working class for profit, how housing is a human right and should not be commoditized for wealth. I see the posts because we are connected on Facebook from the application. Her posts get more frequent and more aggressive about landlords over time. She shares articles about tenant organizing and rent strikes and housing justice, posts memes about guillotines for landlords and eating the rich constantly. I start feeling a bit uncomfortable, but she is still paying rent. Do not think much of it because people are entitled to their opinions. As long as she pays rent and follows lease terms, I do not care. Month 3. Rent comes in on time, so everything seems fine still. Figure her political views are her business and not my concern. One of her posts specifically mentions that her landlord lives next door. Says it is weird living so close to the person extracting her surplus value. Says she can hear me through the walls sometimes, which feels invasive. I realize she is talking about me and feel uncomfortable with this. Month 4. Rent is due on the 1st, but does not come in. I wait a few days, thinking maybe she forgot or had banking issue. On the 5th, I send her polite text reminder that rent is due. She responds saying she knows and is working on it right now. A week goes by and still no rent payment from her account. Send her another text asking when I can expect the payment to arrive. She responds saying she has been thinking about the rent situation lately, says she does not feel comfortable paying rent to a man anymore. Ask her what she means by that and what does my gender matter. She says men should not profit off of housing, which is a human right. Says she has been reading about feminist housing cooperatives and alternatives. Says paying me rent just perpetuates patriarchal wealth, accumulation, and oppression. Tell her that regardless of her beliefs, the lease is a legally binding contract. She signed agreement to pay rent in exchange for housing the unit. She says contracts made under capitalism are inherently coercive and invalid. Says she should not have to pay for a basic human right, like shelter. Explain that I have mortgage to pay and property taxes and maintenance costs. Tell her the rent pays for those things plus small profit for my work. She says that is exactly the problem. Landlords extract value without contributing labor. Says I am a parasite living off her need for housing, which is exploitation. Tell her she can believe whatever she wants, but rent is still due. Say if she does not pay, I will have to start eviction process. She says eviction is violence against women, and she will fight it. Says she has rights as tenant, and I cannot just kick her out. Text her again, few days later, asking if she has reconsidered paying. She responds with a long message about how she has decided to take stand. Says she is refusing to pay rent as act of feminist resistance. Says other women should do the same and stop funding male landlords. She posts our entire text conversation on social media with my number visible. Her friends comment calling me slumlord and parasitic male exploiter of women. Someone comments my full name and address, which feels like doxing to me. I report the post, but Facebook says it does not violate community standards. Send her formal notice that rent is past due and she has 5 days. Notice explains that failure to pay will result in eviction filing with court. She posts the notice on social media saying I am threatening her with homelessness. Her friends comment calling me slumlord and saying she should not pay me. One of her friends comments that she should organize other tenants against me. Sutton responds saying she is working on tenant union in the building. There are no other tenants. It is just a duplex with me and her. But she does not correct her friend and lets the narrative continue. Few days later, she posts that she is refusing to pay rent as protest. Says she is occupying the unit as act of resistance against landlord exploitation. Says housing is human right and she will not be extorted anymore. Encourages other tenants to do the same and withhold rent from landlords. She makes a video explaining her decision to stop paying rent to me. Says she realized she was funding patriarchy by giving money to male landlord. Says women need to stop participating in their own oppression by paying men. Video gets shared widely and has thousands of views within few days. I contact my lawyer about the situation and what steps to take. He says I need to file for eviction through the court system. Says her political beliefs do not excuse her from contractual obligations and lease. Says process will take few weeks, but I will eventually get possession back. Ask him if I should respond to her social media posts publicly. He says absolutely not. Do not engage with her online at all. Says anything I say will be twisted and used against me in court. Tells me to document everything, but stay completely silent publicly. File eviction paperwork with the court for non-payment of rent officially. She gets served with the eviction notice at the unit by process server. She posts photos of the notice online, saying she is being persecuted. Says male landlord is trying to make her homeless for standing up to exploitation. She films the process server delivering the notice and posts the video. Claims the process server was aggressive and intimidating toward her as a woman. The video clearly shows process server being professional and polite the whole time. But her followers only see her narrative and believe her version of events. Her social media friends rally around her and start organizing support campaign. They create GoFundMe, claiming she is being evicted for feminist activism against patriarchy. The fundraiser says she needs help fighting illegal eviction by male landlord. I see the fundraiser, and it has raised about $2,000 so far. The GoFundMe description says, I am retaliating against her for her beliefs. The Go says she is being targeted for speaking out about housing injustice online. Does not mention anywhere that she stopped paying rent 2 months ago. Makes it seem like I am evicting her purely for political reasons. Contact the GoFundMe and report it for fraudulent claims about the situation. Explain that she is being evicted for not paying rent, not for activism. They review it and take down the fundraiser for violating their terms. She posts that I got her fundraiser shut down, and I am silencing her. She starts a new fundraiser on different platform that I cannot report. This one raises even more money, about $5,000 from supporters online. She posts updates thanking everyone and saying she will fight this injustice. Uses the money to hire a tenant rights advocate to help her case. Month 5 arrives, and she still has not paid any rent at all. Now she owes 3 months of rent total and continues living there free. I am still paying the mortgage and all costs while getting nothing. My lawyer says this is normal. An eviction process just takes time. She posts about how she has been living rent-free for months, celebrates it as victory against landlord parasitism and male exploitation of women, encourages others to stop paying rent and squad in their units, says landlords cannot evict everyone if enough people resist together. Neighbor on the street mentions he saw her post about living here, says he did not know I was such a bad landlord to my tenants. I try to explain the situation, but he seems skeptical of my side. She has successfully made me look like villain to people who know me. Eviction hearing date arrives, and we both show up to court. I bring a lease agreement and record showing she has not paid rent. My lawyer presents the case that she violated lease by not paying. She represents herself and argues that housing is human right. Judge asks if she disputes that she has not paid rent for 3 months. She says no, she has not paid, but it is act of protest. Says she refuses to pay male landlord who profits off her need for shelter. Judge says that is not legal defense against eviction for non-payment of rent. She argues that eviction is unconstitutional violation of her human rights to housing. Judge says housing may be important, but lease's legal contract she signed says she agreed to pay rent in exchange for occupying the unit. She says she signed under duress because she needed a place to live. Judge asks if I threatened her or forced her to sign the lease. I say no. She applied voluntarily and was free to choose other housing. She says the entire system is coercive because everyone needs housing to survive. Judge says philosophical objections do not void legally binding contracts and agreements. She pulls out printed articles about tenant rights and housing justice movements, tries to submit them as evidence that her position is morally correct. Judge says moral correctness is not relevant to contract law and lease violation. She argues that unjust laws should not be enforced by the courts. Judge asks if she has any actual legal defense for not paying rent. She says her defense is that housing is human right and rent is theft. Judge sigh and says that is not recognized legal defense in this jurisdiction. She says the law is wrong and needs to be changed to protect tenants. My lawyer presents bank records showing no rent payments for 3 months. Also presents the lease she signed with clear terms about rent payment. Judge reviews everything and says this is a straightforward breach of contract case. She interrupts, saying male judge is biased toward male landlord over her. Judge warns her not to make accusations about bias without evidence of it. She says the evidence is that he is ruling in favor of man. Judge says he has not ruled yet, and she needs to let him finish. She sits down, but is clearly angry and upset about how this is going. Judge rules in my favor and grants eviction with possession of unit. Gives her 10 days to vacate the premises, or sheriff will remove her. She stands up and yells that this is injustice and patriarchal oppression clearly. Belief tells her to sit down, or she will be held in contempt. She sits, but continues talking about how system is rigged against women. Judge warns her again that he will hold her in contempt if she continues. She finally stops talking, but is visibly shaking with anger about the ruling. Court adjourns, and she storms out without looking at me or my lawyer. She posts on social media that judge ruled against her because of sexism. Says male judge sided with male landlord over her as woman because of bias. Says the system is rigged to protect property owners over human beings. Her friends comment that she should refuse to leave and make them remove her. One of her friends, who is a lawyer, comments that the ruling seems questionable. Says she might have grounds to appeal based on judge's apparent bias. Sutton responds, asking if she should file appeal to fight this decision. Friend says it might be worth trying, but success is not guaranteed. I sent her official notice that she has 10 days to vacate her order. She responds, saying she is not leaving, and I will have to forcibly remove. tells me she has consulted with tenant rights advocates about her options here, says she is prepared to resist, and document everything for social media exposure. She posts asking for volunteers to help her move if eviction happens. She says she needs people to witness and document the eviction process for her. About 20 people comment saying they will be there to support her. She thanks them and says she feels blessed to have such solidarity. 10 days pass and she has not moved out of the unit. I file for sheriff to execute the eviction and remove her physically. Sheriff schedules date to come and remove her if she's still there. She posts the date online and asks people to come support her. She creates an event on Facebook for the eviction resistance gathering outside. Event says to bring signs and cameras to document police violence against Tenant. Describes me as slumlord trying to make feminist homeless for political beliefs. Over 50 people RSVP to the event, saying they will attend and support. Day of sheriff eviction arrives, and there are about 15 people outside. They are holding signs about housing justice and tenant rights and protection. Signs say things like, housing is a human right, and eviction is violence. News crew shows up because she contacted them about her eviction story. Sheriff tells the protesters they need to stay on sidewalk, not property. They comply, but continue chanting about tenant rights and housing justice loudly. Sutton comes outside and thanks everyone for coming to support her today. She is wearing a shirt that says resist and carrying her phone to live stream. Sheriff knocks on door and serves her with final notice to leave. She opens door and refuses to leave, saying this is her home. Sheriff explains that court ordered eviction and she must leave now voluntarily. She sits down in the doorway and says she will not cooperate with this. Sheriff warns her that she will be physically removed if she does not comply. She starts live streaming on her phone, saying she is being violently evicted. Protesters are chanting and holding signs, while news cameras record everything happening. Sheriff gives her one final warning before they proceed with removal by force. She still refuses to move, so 2 deputies physically pick her up. They carry her out of the unit while she screams about her rights. Protesters are yelling at the deputies, calling them thugs and enforcers of oppression. News cameras are filming the whole thing as she is carried to the sidewalk. One protester tries to block the deputies and gets arrested for obstruction. Sutton is screaming that they are arresting people for supporting housing rights. Deputies place her on the sidewalk and tell her to stay there. She immediately tries to go back inside, but they block her from entering. Sheriff goes inside and begins removing her belongings to the curb outside. She is crying and yelling that this is illegal and she will sue. I am standing at distance watching this whole scene unfold with lawyer. Feel bad about the situation, but she refused to pay rent or leave. Protesters are filming everything and posting it live to social media accounts. Some of them are interviewing Sutton, asking her how she feels right now. She says she feels violated and attacked by patriarchal violence of state. Says this is what happens to women who stand up to men in power. Sheriff removes all her belongings, which takes about 2 hours total. Furniture and boxes and clothing, all piled up on the curb outside. Some of the protesters help her load things into a borrowed moving truck. She thanks them through tears, saying she could not do this without them. News crew interviews her, and she says she was evicted for being feminist. Says male landlord targeted her for her beliefs about housing justice and rights. Does not mention that she stopped paying rent for 3 months before eviction. Makes it sound like I evicted her for her political views, not non-payment. Reporter asks her where she will go now that she is evicted. She says she does not know and might have to sleep in car. Says this is what happens when you stand up to slumlords and resist. Protester in background yells that housing is a human right, not privilege. I decline to be interviewed by news crew because lawyer advises against it. They air the story that night, showing her being carried out by deputies. Story frames it as tenant activist being evicted for standing up to landlord. Does not mention the months of unpaid rent or the court ruling at all. My phone starts blowing up with angry messages from people who saw news. People calling me scumbag and parasite and threatening to protest my house. Someone posts my address online and says people should make my life hell. I have to temporarily disable my social media accounts because of harassment. Her social media posts go viral with thousands of shares and comments. People are calling me slumlord and parasite and demanding I be investigated. Some people are defending me, saying she should have paid rent like everyone. But most comments are supportive of her and against landlords in general. She starts new GoFundMe for her moving costs and lost belongings. Allegedly, this one raises about $8,000 from people who saw the news story. She uses some of it to rent new apartments somewhere else in city, posts thanking everyone for support in her fight against patriarchal housing exploitation. A few weeks later, I get served with a lawsuit from her for illegal eviction. She is suing for emotional distress and wrongful eviction and damages somehow. Her complaint says I discriminated against her for her feminist beliefs about housing. Her complaint says the eviction was retaliation for her activism and political speech online. My lawyer reads the lawsuit and says it is completely frivolous and baseless, says I followed proper legal process and evicted her for non-payment only. Says her political beliefs are irrelevant to the fact she breached lease contract. Says we will file motion to dismiss and likely win, but takes time. She posts about the lawsuit, saying she is taking me to court for justice. Literally and figuratively. Her followers comment encouraging her and offering to donate to legal fund. She creates legal defense fund that raises another few thousand quickly. Months of legal back and forth with motions and responses and filings. She represents herself and files increasingly bizarre arguments with the court. Argues that all private property is theft and eviction is a form of violence. Cites academic papers about housing justice that are not relevant to contract law. Judge eventually dismisses her lawsuit with prejudice, meaning she cannot refile it. Ruling says her claims have no legal basis and are political grievances, not legal ones. Says eviction was proper and lawful response to her breach of lease contract. She is ordered to pay my legal fees, which are about $3,000. She posts that the system protected the landlord over her as expected. Says she never had a chance because courts exist to protect property owners. Says she will continue fighting for housing justice despite this setback today. Her followers comment support and encouragement to keep fighting the good fight. She never pays the legal fees judgment against her, obviously and predictably. I could pursue collections, but lawyer says not worth the effort and time. She has no assets and no income that could be garnished easily. Decide to just cut my losses and move on from this nightmare. I finally get the unit back and need to do repairs and cleaning. She left the place in terrible condition, with damage and filth everywhere. Holes in walls and carpet stained, and appliances broken or missing parts. Estimate about $4,000 in damages beyond normal wear and tear. Kitchen cabinets are broken, and bathroom sink is cracked, somehow unexplained. She painted one wall black without permission, which is lease violation clearly. Left trash and food everywhere that attracted pests into the unit. Have to hire professional cleaners and pest control to deal with mess. Keep her security deposit to cover some of the damages to unit. Send her bill for the remaining damages plus the unpaid rent owed. She posts the bill online, saying I am harassing her for more money. Says she will never pay me another cent because I do not deserve it. She posts photos claiming I am lying about the damage to unit. Says the unit was in perfect condition when she left it after eviction. The photos she posts are clearly from when she first moved in, not when left. Comments believe her version and call me liar, trying to steal more money. Send the debt to collections agency to try to recover what she owes. Her credit score tanks, and she posts blaming me for ruining her credit. Says, I am vindictive man. Punishing her for standing up for her beliefs. Does not acknowledge that she damaged property and did not pay rent. Spend the next month repairing and cleaning the unit to rent again. Replace damaged appliances and repaint walls and deep clean everything thoroughly. Hire contractors to fix the holes in walls and replace the carpet. Total cost ends up being about $6,000 to get unit rentable again. Interview new tenants very carefully this time and check social media thoroughly. Ask specific questions about their views on landlords during the interview process. Find great tenant who pays on time and takes care of the place. Never have problems with them because they understand leases binding contract. Year later, I see Sutton posted about being denied for apartment application. She is complaining that landlords are discriminating against her for eviction record. Says she is being punished for standing up for housing justice year ago. Does not connect that her actions have consequences for future rental applications. She posts asking for advice on how to rent with eviction on record. People suggest lying on applications or using fake references to get approved. Some suggest she tried to get eviction sealed or expuned from public record. She says she should not have to because eviction was unjust and politically motivated. Someone comments that evictions stay on record for 7 years in our state. She responds, asking if that is really legal, because seems like cruel punishment. Person explains that it is public record because landlords need to protect themselves. She says landlords do not deserve protection because they are exploiters anyway. See her posting about living with roommates now in shared house situation? She complains constantly about the living conditions and lack of privacy there. Says she misses having her own place, but cannot get approved anywhere. Still blames me for her housing instability, instead of taking responsibility for actions. She posts about one of her roommates being difficult to live with. Says the roommate does not clean up after herself and is messy. Someone comments that at least she does not have to pay landlord anymore. She says true, but living situation is still not ideal for her needs. Few months later, she posts asking if anyone knows landlords who will rent to her. Says she has money for deposit in first month, but eviction on record. Several people suggest she tries smaller, independent landlords, not big companies. She says she will never rent from male landlord again after what I did. Someone asks why gender of landlord matters if they give her a chance. She explains that she refuses to give money to men who profit off housing. Says she will only rent from women or housing cooperatives going forward. Limits her options significantly in already difficult rental market with eviction record. Costs a post, where she is asking about tenant protections in different cities. She says she is considering moving to a city with stronger tenant rights laws. Someone suggests she move to a place where rent control is strict. She says that sounds perfect and starts researching cities with those protections. Year and a half after eviction, she posts that she finally found new place. She told it says she is renting room and host owned by woman who understands struggle. Says the landlord is feminist, who believes in housing justice and tenant rights. Happy for her that she found housing, but no, she learned nothing from experience. Think about how her ideology convinced her she did not have to pay rent. She genuinely believed that her feminist beliefs exempted her from contractual obligations somehow, cost her thousands in legal fees and debt, and ruined her rental history. All because she refused to accept that housing costs money, even if rights. The viral news story and social media posts made me look like a villain. But anyone who knows full story understands she brought this on herself completely. I gave her every opportunity to pay or leave before eviction happened. She chose confrontation and martyrdom over simple responsibility to pay rent. Her supporters online still think she was victim of evil landlord exploitation. They do not know or care that she lived rent-free for months. They do not see the thousands in damages she left behind in the unit. They only see the narrative she created about feminist resisting patriarchy. Sometimes refusing to pay rent because landlord is man destroys your housing future. Sometimes feminist ideology does not override legally binding contracts you signed voluntarily. Sometimes playing victim on social media does not change the facts of the case. And sometimes, tenant who refuses rent gets annihilated when eviction process works exactly as intended.